So, Shalom. First of all, I want to say Brakathon, Yahweh Bashi, Yahweh Shah. Right? I want to give all honor and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah, Bahashem, Rakakadash. Double honors to the apostles, the elders of Great Millstone, and shout out to the whole flesh, throughout with the 144,000, Shalom. Right? Lord willing, the lesson be edifying. Right? Watching one of the elder, I watched another one of the elder apostle Gabar lessons. Right? And I was really watching the one, talking about the melting pot again, finishing it off. But, once again, after I be watching it, right, I be watching the elder lesson, the spirit come upon me, things they might say, things they might quote, and the spirit come upon me, to get a lesson done, and, in that aspect, that category, and today, he was just talking about, how the elect was ordained, right? The elect is ordained, how the elect is, been chosen, right? And they the ones who gonna understand this truth, right? So, and I was thinking about how I was gonna go about it, but Lord willing, I ain't got no precept wrote down. Lord willing, the spirit come upon me, and the spirit flow through me, right? Lord willing, y'all watching how shot, right? So, like I say, we're heirs, we're set to receive, an inheritance, right? But it's gonna be a lot of destruction that come, within this, right? A lot of destruction that's gonna come upon Babylon, right? Where the main deliverance is gonna be at, and only the elect gonna, it ain't like Apostle Bar said, it ain't by works. And if you can understand it, and I was listening to it, you think, when it meaning, like, it ain't mean that you just be out here like, oh, I'm elect, I do what I want. No, it's just understanding that the elect is ordained, right? So the elect gonna, hear these things and, do these things and move in the spirit, right? And with that being said, right, the elect gonna automatically do the works of Yahweh Bashim Haushah, if you can understand it, like, because it's kind of plain, you know what I'm saying? You got the prophets, the elders, the teachers, right? The righteous man in the truth, Lord willing, and part of that hopeful elect, they're going to automatically strive and understand, because it's like, it's like going to a job, right? When you go to work every day, they don't have to explain to you what to do, right? When you first come in the truth, it's like that. When you first go to work, you have the orientation where they teach you what to do, right? And what is that? Desiring that sincere milk, right? And then, as you grow, right, you become a teacher, you become knowledge. That's how you would get, just like a job, you have promotions, things of that nature, right? And that's why, even think about it, 1 Peter 5, right? It says, and I started verse 5, right? It said, likewise, ye younger, submit yourselves unto the elder. Yet all of you be subject one to another, and be clothed with humility. For Yahweh resisteth the proud, and giveth grace to the humble. Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of Yahweh, that he may exalt you in due time, right? So, because in due time, as you grow and become a spiritual man, Shalak, excuse me, my kids in the background running around, this the time I get to get that, that the free time to, get the works done. But Lord willing, we're gonna get it done, right? But I was saying, right, you can't, and I read verse 7, it says, cast all your care upon him, for he cares for you, right? But he exalts you in due time, as you grow and as you learn, right, as you grow and learn this truth, and you understand more and more of who we are, understand more and more in this knowledge, right? That's what you become more and more into a spiritual man. You bring yourself into that spiritual man, because this truth is not a carnal thing. Your truth is spiritual, So when you become more and more that spiritual man, you put off that flesh, right? And then and Galatians 5:18, one of my favorite precepts, right? And it says, right, when you walk in the spirit, right, you're not under the law. What's the paraphrasing? Meaning what? When you in that spirit, you automatically move under the law. You do things. You do things of righteousness. You do things of Yahweh Bashim Yahushua, because you got that comfort upon you, leading you, walking you, right? Walking in the path of Yahweh Bashim Yahushua, right? That's why you submit yourselves to elders, right? That's why he said in Philippians 3:17, right? He says, I bring it out real fast. Philippians 3:17, right? And it says, brethren, be followers together of me, right? Who he's talking about? Yahushua. He said, be followers together of me, right? And mark them which walk so as ye have us for an example, right? So mark them which walk in the path of Yahushua and use them as an example, man, right? That's what you got to, and that's what you got to do. Right, that's what you gotta do. You gotta grow, and you gotta submit yourself to the like precept we read, right? And you become a spiritual man. It's like, once again, it's like when you at work, right? You have trainer at work, right? You have a trainer, or even when you're working out, you have a trainer when you're working out. Things of nature, you have somebody teaching you these things until you're able to get out and do it on your own. That's how you is in this truth, right? You desire that sense of milk until you grow, until you learn, and now you become a teacher. Now you become to strong meat, right? You become a teacher. You're able to teach the truth. You're able to, scribe me things, do these things. But that's what the elect gonna do. That's what the elect gonna do anyway. It ain't for you know what I'm saying? You go basically what I'm saying, you gonna automatically move in these works. You ain't gonna be fool and do the things of this world, right? Because you've been ordained, that spirit been on you. The same spirits that believe back then, the same spirits that believe now. Ain't nothing new under the sun. So we already know this shit is foolish, right? Saying what we knew back then, this shit is foolish, right? And with that being said, right, and like I was I was thinking about it, for this lesson, right? Going into, Romans 8, right? Going into 16, right? And 17, right? It's basically what I was saying, right? It said the spirit, this is the spirit right here, right? It said the spirit itself bear witness with our spirit that we are the children of Yahweh, right? And that children of Hebrews is son, right? Understanding that we are the sons of Yahweh Bashim Yahushua, right? Understanding that, and the elect gonna understand these things. You're gonna do these things, right? He says, and if children, right? He said, if children, then heirs, right? Meaning what? Someone who's set to receive something, someone set to receive inheritance, right? He says, heirs of Yahweh and joint heirs with Yahweh Shah, right? And Mashiach Yahweh Shah, because meaning what, right? Yahweh Shah is that mediator, right? 2 Corinthians 5:20, right? He reconciled us back to, to the fold of Yahweh Shah. He's that mediator, right? 1 Timothy 2:5. Well, is it 2? Let me see. Yeah. 1 Timothy 2:5, right? He says, for there is one power and one mediator between Yahweh and men, the man, Mashiach Yahweh Shah, right? Who gave himself a ransom for all to be testified in due time, right? And that, and we, what I'm saying, and even just going back to that, a little more in that to be testified in due time, right? Because you understand it. We're saved by faith and grace and believing on. We say by faith and grace, believing on Yahweh Bashim Yahushua, right? We say by faith and grace, doing the works that He said for us to do. And it's elect gonna understand that, just like just like back then, what He said, if you love me, feed my sheep, and that's and the elect gonna understand to do these things, right? But going back to it, this is one touch on that a little bit, because like Apostle Bar saying in the lesson, right? It ain't about works, man. Right, it's being we ordained, right? We ordained. He's been chosen, right? And once again, I read 16 again, right? Matter of fact, I read verse 4. I read verse 4, right? If I jump now, right? He said that the righteousness of the law might be fulfilled in us who walk not after the flesh, but after the spirit. So when you walk after the spirit, you're going to automatically move and do these things, right? And to get back to the point I was getting to, right? He said, if children then heirs, right? Heirs of Yahweh and joint heirs with Mashiach Yahweh Shah, if so be that we suffer with him, that we may also be glorified together, right? And understand the what? How even back then, right? You go through, let me see. I want to say 1 Peter 1. Or is it 2 Peter 1? Bear with me. 2 Peter. 2 Peter 1, right? And I started at verse 12, right? It said, wherefore I will not be negligent to put you always in remembrance of these things, that though ye know them and be established in the present truth. Yeah, I think it meet. As long as I am in this tabernacle, right? As long as we're in this tabernacle, right? This tabernacle meaning what? This body, this flesh, right? He said to stir you up by putting you in remembrance. Or to stir up meaning what? Get out here on the highways and byways and teach. Do the things that Yahweh Shah said for us to do. And that's what the elect gonna do anyway. Because the elect know. This elect moving in spirit. So the elect gonna get out here and do that. Gonna scribe, do that. If you ain't got no man out teaching the righteous thing, doing the righteous work, scribing, then they ain't part of that elect. Right? He says, but point being, right? He says, knowing that shortly I must put off this tabernacle, right? I must put off this body, this flesh, right? Because what? The spirit live forever, right? So we're gonna put out this flesh, this costume, right? This flesh is the costume, It's really your spirit, you're really dealing with your spirit, right? So he's saying you're gonna put out this flesh, right? Because we're gonna do whatever we gotta do in this flesh, right? He says, even as our Lord Yahweh Shah, Mashiach has showed me, because what? I got my notes. Yahushua told him he gonna die, man. Yahushua told him he gonna die. And going back to Romans, right, 8:17, right, it finishes off and says, so be that we suffer with him, that we may also be glorified together. So even going back to the times of old, right, another quick example, real fast, before I bring the point out. Let me see, I want to say, is it 2:10? No, it's 1 Timothy 4. Let me see, this might be, bear with me, 2 Timothy 4. Right? Right here, right? I started at verse 6 to get straight to the point, right? And this Paul talking to Timothy, right? He telling him, right? Soleil, excuse me, Slack. Stand up, man. Stop sitting in the sand. You're getting your clothes dirty. Right? But he says, 2 Timothy 4, right, verse 6, right? He says, for I am now ready to be offered. At the time of my departure is at hand. Meaning what? Hey, it's getting that time. He departure meaning what? He finna leave his body, right? He finna be in the spirit realm. He finna die. Right? He said, I have fought a good fight and I have finished my course. I have kept my faith. Right? Because they beheaded Paul, man. You gotta do whatever for the truth. And that goes to that suffering. People think that, don't get me wrong, of course, you ain't just gonna have no glorious lifestyle, abundance of money. But a lot of people come to this truth and thinking that, just because they ain't got enough money for this and that, that's that suffering. You gotta think, the men they died for this truth, man. They died for the truth, man. Right? He says, henceforth there's laid up for me a crown of righteousness. Right? Well, that joint hairs, we're set to receive something. Right? Well, that crown of righteousness, right? Which the Lord, the righteous judge, shall give me at that day. And not only me, but unto them also that love his appearing. Right? The ones who, his elect, man. His elect, that tabernacle of David, man. The ones who I had, suffering, going through these persecutions, facing these things for the sake of Yahweh Shah, right? Being hated, being called all these names and things of that nature, can't even go here and there, because people feel like, what they stand for is wrong, right? Oh yeah, you think white people gonna be slaves? Yeah, we know that. The spirit of Yahweh Shah, that's what the Bible tells us, right? But these people don't understand these things. These people don't get these things. But guess who will? The elect will understand these things, right? And I want to bring up this other precept that, Elder Pastor Kabar had showed, right? Good precept going into the parable, right? Let me see. It was Psalm 78. And I'm also go to, bear with me, Psalms 78, right? It says, verse 1, right? It says, give ear, O my people, to the law, incline your ears, the words of my mouth. How he speak to us. The law, the words of scriptures, right? He speak to us through these scriptures. Also the prophecy. Let us know these things, right? Showing us these things, showing us the time, showing us things that come to pass, knowing that, we getting nearer and nearer to our salvation, right? Or Revelation 12 and 12, right? It says, I will open my mouth in a parable. I will utter dark sayings, which we have heard and known, our fathers have told us, right? And like a point being, I think it's Genesis 9:25, where it talk about, how I want to say, let me just go to it, right? Quick side note real fast, 9:25, right? Yeah, and Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness, right? He saw the nakedness of his father, and so his two brethren, right? So he was cursed by Noah, right? And he said, "Cursed be Canaan." A servant of servants shall be unto his brother, right? So Canaan was cursed because his father's doing, right? But what they show you, we live not our curses. We live not our curses. We live not our curses that's put upon us, because why? We're our fathers from back then, right? And going to the I really just lost my train of thought. Going to the precept I was just at. How I do that? Oh, well, point being, I just really lost my train of thought. Slack for that. Yeah, but throughout how about y'all? I came back to me. Yeah, but right, being right here, right, it says which we have heard and known, our fathers have told us, right? Knowing that knowing that, you know, that we're our fathers from back then, nothing new under the sun, right? So, you know, going from there, right? Matthew 13, right? And meaning, you know, we knowing these things because how? You know, the same spirits that didn't believe back then are the same spirits that don't believe now. And the same spirits that been known back, the same spirits that been believe, the same spirits that wasn't believing back then, they still don't believe. And the same spirits that did believe, they do believe. That's why I told him, you know, fill out the measure of your faults. That's why you got all these wicked camp groups. That's why you got all these wicked, you know, these prostates. You want us to go out here teaching the opposite of what Yahushua came and showed us, right? Them the same who did that back then. That's why I don't say what book that was. In the book of it was Yahushua's brother, right? Titus. No, it ain't Titus. I'm tripping. I got it in my notes. Let me see. Jude. Thought about Yahushua. Well, in the book of Jude, when he telling you, right? Jude telling them, right? Continue in the faith. Because you got these ones, you know, when Yahushua died, resurrected, right? And went up there with the Father, Yahweh, right? You had these men who going out and just start teaching the total opposite of the truth, right? And that's those same men who do today. You got these different camps who go out here and just do whatever they want in this truth. Teaching all this crazy knowledge, teaching all this nonsense, right? But you got the elect who been ordained, right? Ephesians 1:4, right? According as he has chosen us in him before the foundation of the world, that we should be holy and without blame before him in love, having predestinated us unto the adoption, right, of children by Hamashiach Yahushua, or Yahushua Mashiach, to himself according to the good pleasure of his will, right? You know, we've been chosen, been predestinated. The elect have been chosen and be predestinated before, like, you know, before all this. That's why you got, you know, that's why you got all these people who you know, they get deceived and brought this elect, because why? They ain't been chosen, man. They ain't been chosen from before. You know, you got these men who out here and do the work, and that goes to show you, you know, these men who've been going off. You think they are the elect, right? I don't even know dude's name, but he had a little thing going on where he had some, you know, these men you would think righteous stay in the nation, and they end up finding out this truth, right? That goes to show you that what, you know, the elect ain't shown by his word. You have a person who can be out here doing videos out on the highways, byway, and it can still be wicked, right? Which we have seen. But the elect, right? Ain't nothing gonna pull the elect out of the truth. Ain't nothing gonna make the elect go sidetrack in this thing, right? Because they're focused, right? They're focused. They're locked in. You know, they gonna do the will and do the work, just like the prophets back then. They're gonna do the work, and they're gonna take what come with it, right? They're gonna take whatever come with it. You know, I guess Paul said it in Romans 8, Paul said it, right? He said, you know, we're sheep to the slaughter, man, right? But it's a good one right here, right? I could just kept reading now, right? But I really wanted to go to the one in Romans as well. But, you know, I'll read this as well because it also goes with Romans 8:17, right? The ones who set to receive an inheritance, right? And we're going to read that in Romans 9:4 as well, right? It says, I'll start at verse 9, having made known to us the mystery of his will, those dark sayings, according to his good pleasure, which he had proposed in himself, that the dispensation of the fullness of times he might gather together together in one all things in Mashiach, both which are in heaven and which are on earth, even in him, in whom also he have obtained an inheritance, being predestinated according to the purpose of him who worketh all things after the counsel of his own will, that we should be to the praise of his glory, who first trusted in Mashiach Yahushua, those first fruits, right? You know, doing the right thing, doing the work. As soon as he came down here, you knew who he was, doing his thing. And those same men here today, right? You got these men who come in this truth, right? And when you come in this truth, you start remembering, you start understanding, right? You start understanding, you get the old, like, you know, it hit like you done it before, which because we have, you know, because we ain't nothing new under the sun, you know. Regeneration came back, right? But now we out here doing it again, scribing again. But now it's a test, man, because you got all these things, you know, that narrow passage. You got all these things you got things on the right, you got things on the left, you know, and it's easy to be deceived. It's easy to be deceived in this wicked kingdom, this melting pot, right? It's easy to be deceived in this kingdom, but it's for us to remain focused, right? Matthew 24:24, as it reads, says, "For there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, in so much that if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect." If it were possible, but it ain't possible though, right? They gonna scribe. The elect gonna stay in this thing. The elect gonna do the righteous work, because it's gonna be so many things that's coming this way, right? And that's how the Most High see who with him or not. He say, then shall be known who are my chosen. 2 Ezra 16:13. But it's gonna be a lot. It's gonna be a lot have been deceived, and the Most High said it that way. Those fake ones, those fake ones, they're gonna be exposed, right? They're gonna be exposed. They're gonna be brought out. But the elect gonna remain in this thing all the way to the end, right? They're gonna scribe. Let me see. Let me see. Bear with me. Bear with me. I want to say it's. Yep. Matthews. It's a couple on, right? Matthews 10, right? Matthews 10, right? And here we get straight to the point, right? Matthews 10, verse 22, right? He says, Ye shall be hated of all men for my name's sake, but he that endures to the end shall be saved. He that endures to the end, right? Not, and then you go, like he said, you're going to have a lot on, and like talk about it, Luke, man, you're going to have a lot on, man, Lord, who's out here, prophet, who's doing this and that. Yeah, endure to the end, right? When shit get hard, yeah, you're going to want to return back. All of them going to do that. Like, it's like why he said it's going to be like the days of Noah, right? When they didn't think that flood was coming. Till that flood came, now they knocking on the door, begging to get on the ark. You know what I'm saying? And that's how it's gonna be. But that's why you gotta endure to the end. That's why you gotta stay focused. Right? You gotta serve how about Shah fear and trembling. Because when you understand his power, you understand he can control anything. Shit can get popping right now. You know what I'm saying? Shit can get popping right now. And you gotta understand that. You know what I'm saying? Right? And that's why you gotta, be in this prophecy. That's why he said, I make my, actually going back to another point in Psalm 78 in the first verse, right? You said, hear the words of my mouth. That's why you got to understand the prophecies as well. Because your prophecy is going to show you these things. He's speaking us through the prophet. He's showing us these things. He's showing us these times. He's showing us these signs, right? And it's for us to be able to discern. The elect to be able to discern them, right? Be able to understand what's going on. See these things, right? Understand these things to prepare, right? That's, another quick precept they come to mind real fast. Revelation 19 and verse 7, right? He says, let us be glad and rejoice and give honor to him, for the marriage of the Lamb is come, and his wife have made herself ready, right? We're in that marriage with Yahweh Shah, man, right? Focus only, stand loyal, stand sincere to the vow we made with Yahweh Shah, right? We're making ourselves ready by this word, this scripture, doing the work, doing these things, striving all the way to the end. Not being deceived by these things that's on the left and on the right. Not being deceived by all these things that the world try to throw at you, right? Putting on that whole armor, right? Doing the works that he set, right? And guess who's gonna do that? The ones who are ordained, the ones who are, been chosen, the ones who've been chosen. You understand? John 15:16, right? You have not chosen me, I have chosen you, rough paraphraser. You don't get to choose, right? He choose us. That's why, once again, that's why you see a lot get sifted out. But that's why he said, though, even the least grain shall not hit the ground. I'll read it in NLT, right? I like it when I like Amos 9 in the NLT, right? It's like for notifications. Amos. I gotta start getting ready for work, so we'll bring out a few more precepts. Let me see. Amos. And we'll just tie this, endure to the end. Because that's what the elect gonna do. They got Amos saying, what's going on? Oh, there it goes. Amos 9. Right? And I want to say what it is. Yep. Amos 9 and 9, right? He said, for I will give the command, and I will shake Israel along with the other nations as grain is shaken in the sea, yet not one true corner will be lost. Right? When he shake this thing up, when he sift out, not one true corner gonna follow this truth. The ones who in this truth sincerely, the ones who in this truth righteously, they're going to endure to the end. They're going to strive all the way to the end of this thing, right? They're going to do the righteous work no matter what come at them. When times get harder, when times get bad, they don't matter what it is. They're going to stay in this truth, right? You know? I'm going to go quick precept, right? Matter of fact, I got two more quick precepts. One of my favorite. I got to bring this one out, right? Ecclesiastes 2, and I started at verse 2, right? It says, set thy heart aright and constantly endure. Make not haste in the time of trouble. Cleave unto him and depart not away, that thou may be increased at thy last end. That's what you got to consider, man. People be trying to live in the present time, be trying to live in this world now. But the fastest world passes away. When you understand it, the elect who understand this thing, right, understand that this world is nothing. This world is bullshit. Melting pot, seasoned melting pot, seasoned pot destruction, man. This shit gonna be destroyed. You want to be increased to like Paul said, right? He didn't get that crown. Oh, you read 2 Timothy 4, right? He didn't get that crown, right? He didn't get that crown right then. He said that I'm gonna get that crown. I'm gonna get that crown that day. And me also. It's talking about the 2 Ezra 40, the 40th chapter going on down. Even the ones also who love his appearing, man. Who love his appearing, the ones who subscribe to the end, the ones who got that faith, understanding that we're gonna receive that inheritance, we're gonna receive that the glory, the covenant, the covenant, the things that he set for us, right? Romans 9 and 4, right? The things he said, the kingdom, all these things, right? Spiritual powers, right? But right, one quick precept in and out, and like I said, we'll name this one, enduring to the end, right? Revelations 21, in verse 7. Right, and it says, he that overcometh shall inherit all things, and I will be his power, and he shall be my son. Right? So once again, man, you got to overcome these things. Guess who's going to do that? The elect, those ones who ordained, the ones who predestinated, right? The ones who've been set for this thing. You going to have the ones who come to this thing thinking that, that they can get by just trying to fake it by, showing, they trying to fake it by just showing up to work. Nah, man, you got to be chosen in this thing. You got to be set for this thing, man. This got to, it's got to be in you, not on you. They say it got to be in you, not on you. So that being said, right, I want to give all honor and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah, Bahashem, Rakakadash. Double honors to the apostle elders of Great Millstone, and shout out to the whole flesh tribe with 144,000. Shalom. Matter of fact, that being said, we all got one more quick precept real fast, because it's on my mind to bring it out, right? Romans 8 and 29, 30, right? For whom he did foreknow, he also did predestinate to be conformed to the image of his son, right? Those men who walk after Yahushua, right? Right? So that he might be the firstborn among many brethren. Moreover, whom he did predestinate, them he also called, right? Because, we all saints, but everybody ain't called to be a saint, man, right? He says, and whom he called, them also he justified. And whom he justified, them he glorified. That's elect, man. The ones who obtain this knowledge and stick with this knowledge and scribe all the way to the end. So with that being said, Rockathon, Yahweh Shah, and Lord will be back with another lesson soon. Shalom.